Nick Stone, welcome Dylan Friends podcast, my friends. It's an honour, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to have you in the studio.
Thanks, Dill. Nice to be here. Lovely. I like this makeshift studio, actually. It's quite intriguing, elusive up the stairwell. Reminds me of one of my stores. But yeah, great to be here in a really wet, typical mid-year Melbourne day.
It is. No, so what's your living arrangement at the moment? Obviously, a lot of your business is in the States. You're back here in Australia, in Melbourne at the moment. Congratulations on the birth of your third child. How does that work? Are you just back to...
Well, we're very fortunate we're staying with my parents-in-law. So they're in Brighton, so they're helping us out with 3 kids under 4. And yeah, the new arrival, Clementine, on Friday. My wife's an absolute hero, Alexandra. And yeah, we're very lucky to stay there and provide a lot of support because I'm heading back to the States in early July. So it's working well, and I think we'll assess later in the year that the continued elongated hotel quarantine has thrown a bit of a spanner into our plans because it was quite challenging for the kids when they first came back. So yeah, I'm going to go back and get back to work over there, and they'll stay here for the remainder of the year. Yeah.
So the move to New York, we'll get into that down the track. But at the moment, where are you situated? What's day to day like for you, running Bluestone Lane?
Well, at the moment, it's early mornings, that's for sure, on New York hours. But, my role's transitioned quite a bit over the years as the business has grown and scaled. But certainly nothing has been as colourful as the last 15, 16 months. Last year was very much focused on, honestly, survival and innovating and pivoting as fast as we could. The amount of variables were just extraordinary. It's hard to grasp it here. And I know that Melbourne's had, a number of different frantic lockdowns, but just the enormity of the situation in the States. We're talking about 33 million positive COVID cases. We're talking about over 600,000 deaths, and in the markets in which we have our largest presence, they were actually sort of ground zero for the most concentrated COVID positive cases, and it really reared its head so dramatically and so quickly in March 2020 when New York went from 0 to basically 20,000 cases within 2 weeks, and it was already in Bluestone Lane's business. We had team members. My brother, he probably doesn't want me to say this, but my brother was the first person I knew to test positive, and through no one knew what was going on in March, and it decimated our business. So we had to change very, very quickly, and the team galvanised around the new way forward, and it was just incredible. And now we're on this huge rebound, and you might have seen this week that both New York and California are fully open now. So they've removed any of the restrictions, and in fact, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask at all anymore. So New York's just hit 70% of its population, the state population, are fully vaccinated. So if anything, I really hope Australia get their act on and start to go out in droves. And I hope the governments really look at what the US have done to vaccinate 300 million people so quickly, because that's the chance to re-engage with the world again. And it's, in my opinion, it's such a shame that, in many cases that Australia is still continuing this really, in many cases, a bit sort of a naive approach to think that you can just close your borders and then there won't be externalities from that are going to be felt for a number of years to come.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Look, I wasn't even, planning on talking about this now, but like growing up...
I don't know if the listeners
but it is so interesting because even from your point of view, like, personally, I look at someone that would be starting a cafe now or a restaurant and how affected they've been in Melbourne, especially because we've suffered the most with COVID lockdowns. Like, how hard would that be realistically, like, to run your business model in Victoria at the moment? Like, do you feel for these people that are going through this?
Absolutely. I think it's traumatic because you restaurants and hospitality has so much what they call operating leverage, which is your ratio of fixed cost to variable cost. So you have to pay your rent, you have to pay the salaries of your team, you still have to buy sort of produce, even if suddenly you're told you're not allowed to let anyone dine in your restaurant. And dealing with those fixed costs destroy businesses. They put them in a liquidity spiral, and it's just really, really hard to plan. And you think about also the labour laws in Australia and in the US. There's a continued movement towards predictability of schedule and stability of hours, so people know when they go to work what they're getting paid and when they're rostered on. Now, suddenly, what do you do if you're the proprietor and the government just decides within 24 hours, hey, you're not allowed to operate anymore? What do you do with all your stuff that you've committed, and you still have to abide by the law? So there's just a number of those sort of challenges that put businesses under so much pressure. And, I think the support in Australia generally, the JobKeeper was quite extraordinary, really, considering Australia's talking about still less than 1,000 positive cases. And if we were using the same ratio as the States, we'd be talking about like 2.5 million positive cases. If it was, parity 10%, thankfully we're not. But there was a lot of support. But, I think the snap lockdown is really, it's definitely sort of crushed some spirit, but thankfully everyone got behind it, and it's lifted. But I do believe that it's quite extraordinary that Victorians in particular will, and it's a credit to them, that they will listen to the government. And if the government says, listen, we're going into lockdown, and everyone abides by it in the majority. But I hope that they put the same amount of pressure on all governments, that they're providing access to the vaccine to the same level of intensity as they lock economies down. And that's the thing that I find a bit perplexing.
I feel like we should run for Parliament.
Pardon?
I think we should run for the government at the moment. It'd be good.
Yeah,
it'd be very exciting.
It's a horrible job.
It's terrible. You can't get it wrong.
It doesn't attract the best of breed, I think, because it's just so.
I feel so much smarter already talking to you, by the way. I love this conversation. It's not one that I normally have
so
with
do
my
I,
mates.
Dill. It's reciprocal.
It's not one that I'd have with my mates, and I feel very cool. Now, Nick, as much as I love talking about COVID all day, you have one of my favourite stories in footy. I know.
Not my career, I assume.
Well, actually, there is some things that I do want to talk about your career. Yeah. But I suppose looking at your story now is a real inspiration to me, because for someone, and a lot of people that are in sport and in the AFL, a lot of people think, fuck, this is the height of my life. After this, things are never going to be as good. And, I know that I fell in that trap when I was early days in my career. And to see what you've been able to do post that, and I suppose use somewhat of the learnings you've done in your career, and I know you're an intelligent man and did a lot of study outside of that, but to transfer into what you've done now in the States and as a business owner, it truly is, it's incredible, not just for someone that plays sport, but just career changes in general. And that was the main reason I wanted to get you on the show today, to have a chat about how you did it. But first, I think it would be remiss of me not to touch on the career that you did have across 6 years, Collingwood, Saints and Hawthorn.
Yeah.
Talk us through getting to those clubs, what they were like. You played 20 games across 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I feel like you will definitely know this. The average of that, 20 games over 6 years, what is that?
5? Was it 4?
I average 5.3. So
yeah. No, it's not. 5, 630. So what is it? 3.2? Okay. 3.2? Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's not often I trump people in that, but that's good. Talk us through first experiences getting to Collingwood. How did that all come about? What was your career like? Was it high hopes?
I was drafted in 1999, and back then I was drafted before Year 12 had finished. So I had my English exam on the Friday, and the draft was on the Sunday. It was televised on Channel 7. I remember watching it at my grandmother's house with my dad.
Yep.
I was a late chance. I was probably more likely to go in the rookie draft, but that year I'd had a good year, and I only played 1 year under 18s, but we won the premiership, and I played centre half back in the premiership team. And
with Sandringham or with Wesley?
Yeah, with Sandringham. Okay. Yeah, and we were the most dominant team. We won. That was one of the highlights of my footy career. We played on grand final day when they used to have the under 18s, then the reserves, then the seniors.
Yes.
And that was phenomenal. Like playing at the G on grand final day as the first curtain raiser.
Sorry, as well. Who played with you in that Sandringham team at that stage?
We had 8 players drafted. So David Spriggs, Jason Blake, Ezra Poyers, Mark Hanley, Nick Reese, Stephen Green, Jeremy Dukes, and myself were all drafted. No one went on to be an absolute superstar. Blakey played the most games. I think he played just under 200 games, around 200 for St Kilda. Spriggsy and Ezra were top 10 or top 15 draft picks. Dylan Smith was also in the team, and he went early the following year. I think he went in top 10. But that year, I probably had year 11 at school, and then in year 12, I was captain of Wesley. I captained the APS team, and then played at the Dragons. And I loved it. That year was phenomenal. It actually makes my heart sort of break when I hear about people missing out in their final year of sport at school. That was such a big part of year 12. That was so much enjoyment playing with the mates, and then to know that that's been just interrupted this year and last year just was not possible. It's pretty traumatic, I reckon, if you're 16, 17 and you've been or 18 looking forward to it. So then got picked up at Collingwood. It was at Victoria Park.
Wow.
Didn't have my driver's license.
Yeah.
And I hadn't. So you can imagine this. This is Victoria Park.
Boy from Brighton, mind you.
Yeah, boy from Brighton. I'd never been, I don't think, to Abbotsford or Northcote. And Dad dropped me off there.
Therefore you say I'm from Fitzroy as well. So.
There you go, northern suburbs. I probably, didn't fraternise with you guys too much. I was pretty insular down the Bayside. But anyway, I've moved on. Now I want to be up there. That's the trendy part. But I still can't believe that you asked me my average of my games over 6 years, and I said 5. It's not very good for a former banker. It shows you how reliant I'm on Excel. Disintermediated my brain. But so I'll never forget a few things. So I didn't have my car. I remember rocking up, and I walked in, and it was this side door, and it was the old club rooms. And I walk in, and Mick Malthouse is there. It's his first year, and this is his first draft for Collingwood. And he said to me, I've just got rid of one Nick Stone, and now I've got another one. That was the first thing he told me, because he just sacked the Nicholas Stone from West Coast a couple of months earlier. That was the first thing he said to me when I walked in. And then Eddie was there, I remember, and then Bucks was the captain, and I hadn't turned 18 yet, and I couldn't believe. And they asked me. They said, "Oh, you come to training?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go to training." But I had 2 mathematics exams, I had 2 Chinese exams, I had an economics exam, and I had geography. Collingwood just couldn't believe that I was studying Chinese. That's like, I don't think anyone in their entire organisation maybe even spoke Chinese, but or understood what Mandarin was. So that was a bit of a shock. But training there, and so first year I was never going to play. I was too raw, and I'll never forget the first game was the Millennium game. They played on New Year's Eve. And Fev kicked 10 I think it was at Telstra Dome or Marvel Stadium, and the spray Mick gave the team, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, I hope that never happens to me. It was, you could hear it from 300 metres away. It was the biggest spray. It was his first game, and obviously big time coach, and come from 2 premierships at the West Coast. And so that year, then the second year, I had a good pre-season, and I played pretty well in the pre-season. I played a game in the seniors, and I actually thought and then the jumper presentation, they said you'd play, and I remember Barmy saying Nick Stone's had a great pre-season, he's going to play this year. And I ended up I sort of had a rough start, but sort of I played better in the second half, but what happened is I ended up fracturing my navicular.
Oh, shit.
And I kept playing with it because I was out of contract. And then I had 2 stress fractures also in that foot. So at the end of the season, Collingwood said, you're going in plaster for 3 months and we're going to see if it heals or we'll have to operate. But it was actually so coinciding with the time when Hurd had fractured his navicular, and then Matthew Allen from Carlton. And these guys were basically their careers were finished. So I think Collingwood were very concerned about that, and they were sort of implying we can't re-sign you, we'll try and move you to the rookie list. And that's when I got a call from Hawthorn, but and then went to Hawthorn. Jade Rawlings called me up, and with John Turnbull, the recruiting manager, and said we could look after you and we could develop you, and we'd seen you play in the pre-season and we can rehab your foot. And I went to Hawthorn and got picked up on the rookie list, their first pick, or the second pick maybe. And then I was promoted to the senior list in pre-season because they had a spot. And then played 8 games that year, including the game where I played. I was meant to be commentating in Chinese.
This is an incredible story. We need to go into, because when you said the Mandarin before, I don't know if someone was taking the piss when they told me this, but this is unbelievable. You were gone there to help commentate the game in Mandarin. So you're there not even as a player, you're not even on the emergency list.
I was on the emergency
You're
list.
on the emergency list.
Yeah, but I wasn't anticipating playing. Yeah. So I was meant to be up in this box, and I wasn't going to commentate. I was going to do like more like special comments, just a couple
in Mandarin.
Yeah, just a couple of words thrown in there. Like Nick, and he's reaching out to particularly the Chinese community out in the east, which is a great initiative from Hawthorn. And I was just going to add some hellos and my name is Nick. Nothing too extravagant. Quite orthodox.
You can sort of see as well the respect that Collingwood gave you when you could speak Mandarin versus what Hawthorn sort of gave you when you speak Mandarin. I think
there's a different cultural sort of. Collingwood changed a lot very quickly. I think when they left Victoria Park, but so I'm meant to be commentating, and I get this phone call, or it's either my phone rang or David Parkin came and said, "Hey, Jonathan Hay has done his back in the warm up. You're playing," and literally ran down there and quickly had to find my jumper and shorts. It got my ankles, and no warm up, ran straight onto the ground, started on Ben Graham, who at that point was the captain of Geelong, and was consistently up there with either winning a Coleman or thereabouts. And played on him and kept him, I think, to 1 goal or 2 goals. Played well, and that was my second game. My first game actually is a pretty funny story too, but we ended up winning, and it was amazing. But my first game with Hawthorn, so I played round 2, and it was up against the Lions, and they were coming off their first flag.
Oh, God.
So this team was absurd. Yeah. Like, you look back on it now.
Voss,
they were
Ackermanis, Lappin, Hart, everyone.
Black, the Scots, Alistair Lynch, the forward line of
big
Lynch,
guy with the long hair,
Brown,
used to scare the shit out of me.
Bradshaw. It was just, and then the back line was Mal Michael, Justin Lepich. It was just elite, absolutely elite. Yeah. So we go up there, and first game, and I start on the ground on Bradshaw, and I'm sort of doing okay. I'm just running close. I'm not running off him at all. There's no spread. I'm just like man on man. Even when we got the ball, I think I'm still arm across, locked in. And then I ended up moving to Brownie, and I think he didn't sort of kick any goals on me, and I was doing okay. I think I played against him before in under 18, and then I remember in the last quarter, Lynch was just sort of really, and we were getting smashed, and Lynch sort of really started to flex a little bit and bring out the deltoids. And anyway, this ball came down. I couldn't believe it. Acker's got it on the wing, and he's taken like 3 bounces. And I'm playing on Lynch thinking there's just no way that he could kick this 55 metres on his left foot and put me out of position. Yeah. It was one of the best kicks I've ever seen in my life. Lynch has bench pressed me in 4 hours under the ball, grabbed the ball and literally kicked it out of the stadium. And I was like, this is welcome to the prime time now. And I was just looking at myself going, oh my God, like how do you compete with these guys? But that was the first game ever. And and then played, as I said, 8 games that year. Then the next year at Hawthorn played 9 games, and actually played 7 games in a row, played some good footy, had a couple of games where I played pretty well. And unfortunately I got injured and missed the last few games. And I think what was disappointing with Hawthorn is when I was in that run of playing 7 games in a row, they implied, okay, well, Nick will have a new contract and he'll be signed up for the next couple of years. And then I got hurt, and then suddenly my contract all got stalled, and it was sort of like, well, we're not sure, but we wanted to sort of keep him in the club and might have to redraft him as a rookie. I'm going, what's going on here? Like, I was playing well, and sort of sure enough, they were working to basically get someone in to take my spot, which was Trent Crode. They were working to get Crody back from Fremantle, back from Hawthorn. And I went to Hawthorn when they traded Crode, and Hawthorn had missed the finals both years I was there. When the year prior they had made that prelim, and where Trent Crode hit the post against Essendon, and so there was a lot of frustration that Hawthorn hadn't gone on because they thought they had a good list. And So I ended up training there, going back in the draft, and I got picked up by St Kilda, and I hadn't even spoken to. And St Kilda's very close to where I was living. I spent the whole time living at home. One thing is amazing. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I'm back in Brighton at my parents-in-law place. And I'm cleaning out the attic. I had all I was pretty meticulous in like filing things away. I got it from my mum. So like, all my bank statements and all this like useless stuff. But I put it in folders and it was just very organised. And I saved all my footy contracts. So I just went through them, and my soon-to-be brother-in-law is a former Brisbane Lion and Collingwood player, Jackson Payne, who's engaged.
Well, he was my age.
Yeah.
We played together through Vic Metro and everything.
Oh, good. Yeah. So Payne is engaged to...
Can I tell you something very funny on Jackson Payne?
Yeah.
This is really weird. But last night, this is how fucking the universe is. I was sending a message to my mate saying, "Hey Siri, send a message to Jake McBean saying, 'Fuck you, you dog.'" And like, sorry for anyone there. And then Siri goes, "Hey Siri, are you sure you want to send 'fuck you, you dog' to Jackson Payne?"
Wow.
Last night. I didn't send it to him because I haven't spoken to him in like 4 years, but he's one of the best blokes of all time. Sorry to interrupt.
There you go. Siri must have known who was coming on the next day.
So Jackson Payne, if that did go through, I apologise. That was not meant to go.
He can handle it.
Yeah.
He's a big boy. And he's a very funny cat too.
Big boy. He used to get a lot of ingrown hairs on his legs.
Yeah, no, he still gets a few of those. Yeah, but nah, he's what a legend.
He's the funniest guy ever.
I think he won the gold jacket, like 3 footy trips, which is the Brisbane Lions footy trip, best on trip. Yeah. I think he won it 3 times. Unbelievable. I think he was only there for 3 seasons or maybe 4. Yeah. So he knows how to go hard.
No, he's a good boy.
Yeah. So anyway, that's JV. I'm talking about my footy contracts.
Yes,
so what I couldn't believe, I was like, look how much I earned when I got drafted. It is criminal. It's actually like, I cannot believe the AFL got away with this.
Rookie contract, can I guess?
So when I got drafted, 3rd round pick, 1999, my base salary was $24,000, including super. Now, imagine if I didn't live at home. Imagine if you're an interstate kid that comes at 3rd round draft pick, and then my next year was 30 grand, and then at Hawthorn, my starting rookie contract was $18,000. Right. Then I got upgraded to the senior list, and it doubled to 36. And I got $2,000 bonus because I played in the Wizard Cup, which Hawthorn, which then Hawthorn took back from me when I got elevated to the senior list. I completely forgot all this. I see this letter. We are rescinding that $2,000 we gave you for playing in the Wizard Cup because you now got elevated to the senior list on $36,000. It is criminal. And then I ended up, because I'd had those 2, and then the 2 years at Hawthorn, then I went to St Kilda. I got picked up as a rookie. Yeah, my rookie base, I think, was $25,000, and this is in 2004. And I got put on the senior list and played a couple of games. Then the next year, I started on the senior list. It's pretty extraordinary when you think about it, and I could only imagine that was the era. I think the AFL was professionalising itself. It was becoming very fixed on the dopamine of TV rights and privatising what I think is a public asset, which is the AFL. And that's another thing that I can really tear into. But I remember back then that some of the administrators were starting to earn upwards of $1 million.
Yeah. And players getting paid 20 grand.
And players getting paid 20 grand. And the AFL administration's going around saying, you have to pay us this amount because we are defending our game and our growth from the emergence of soccer and the emergence of all these.
Yeah.
I'm like, honestly, this is the same scare tactic that I think the Americans used to invade, Iraq. It was like this fear mongering. I'm like, this is a game that is indigenous. It stood the test of time. It's not going anywhere. It has the best participation rate. And more importantly, it has such an incredible female engagement. And that's what separates the AFL from any other football code globally, is the amount of females that attend games and are interested in the game. And no other sporting code has that. And that's why the AFL is of significant interest to the NFL. A number of these other football codes, and that's the biggest difference between the AFL and either rugby league or rugby union, is the female supporter base and participation, which is extraordinary. It's a credit to the game, but yeah, it's pretty it's pretty, when you look back on it, it is kind of scary that these kids were moving across the state and going to be paid less than $20,000, have to fend for themselves. They maybe got a little allowance, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunity cost being an AFL player.
But even, to an extent now, I know there's players that are on millions of dollars, which realistically, when you think about it, the Dustin Martins, Lance Franklins of the world, they're only earning $1 million when the game generates, hundreds of millions of dollars. They should be on so much more that they're on. And the thing that annoyed me the most was this, when I was playing footy, I was on rookie deals and nearly paying registration, to be honest, to be there. But it would always say the average income is 300 grand. I never saw 300 grand, like not once. Like that stat is of people that actually play the game. So you're saying that all the people that aren't playing actually aren't even into that average. So that's going to bring it down nearly Harvard at least. Yeah, it's so stupid. Look, you can articulate a lot better than me, but there's no way the players now, and living in the States especially, where you realise it's actually the players' game that are making it. They deserve to be making a lot more money than they are.
Yeah, there's a lot of inequity, and I would say even with the top players, I don't know if they're earning more than what Gil McLachlan would earn.
They're probably not.
And I think that's I know Gil's position is very important, and he's a chief executive of a large business, but it doesn't have any competitive threats. It really doesn't. It doesn't compete. It's not a publicly listed company. No. It's a public asset. It's a public asset. It's owned. It should be owned by the people for the people. It's part of being Australian. And I think that we've got a really delicate balance between looking at it as something that's private and meant to generate a shareholder return versus something that is a public good. And I think there needs to be a redistribution back to the players, especially when you look at the repercussions from having an AFL career and the sacrifices made, not just at the time, and there's tremendous opportunity costs, but in the future. And because of their courage and commitment, that the game is a spectacle and entertaining. But I've got lots of friends who are dealing with serious issues post-career. Not just bad knees and backs, but issues with their head, issues with psychology. And it's a very, very tough thing for most players to move from effectively chasing their childhood dream, realising it's somewhat, and then trying to transition at such a young age, where in the States, you look at when they go pro, they're going pro at 21, 22, 23. My career was finished at 23 and I had 6 seasons. It's just a very different demand.
Really, it's so funny because, it's not funny, but yesterday I was doing a talk with Cricket Victoria, and I was chatting to these young blokes just about like my transition out of the game and what I'd sort of picked up along the way. And someone said to me, they were like, do you think that if you knew what you knew now, like you would have had a better career and then played longer footy? And I was like, fuck, I honestly don't wish I had played longer, because I think the longer I'm in the game, the more it's actually going to set me back off field. I look back now, and it's interesting to get your thoughts on this, but like, because I left the game earlier, I wasn't as attached to this AFL career, and I was still young enough to forge another career after it. Whereas a lot of these guys that leave, if they're not investing in themselves off field, and you leave the game at 33, and there's not many coaching positions anymore, it's fucking so hard to actually find another career path and purpose post-footy.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I look at the timing as very serendipitous for me. So I got delisted in 2005. I got delisted. So I found out that I was delisted from St Kilda in the paper.
Yes.
Break
this down, because this is unbelievable.
So I finished my final exam at Monash Uni. I see a missed call from Grant Thomas. Right. I'm like, I just finished my degree, 6 years part-time.
What's a degree, sorry, by the way?
I did business, banking and finance. That's cool. So I went from doing commerce to banking and finance, so I didn't have to go to Clayton, so I could go to Caulfield. So it worked out really, really well, because I was still living at home. And I remember, I'm like, I'm not answering this. I just finished so literally, that was Friday. List lodgement was due at like 4 p.m. And he called me, I think at 2 p.m. And then literally in the paper the next day, because I'm on the way to Derby Day, and Stephen Powell texts me saying, "Oh mate, I can't believe it. I'm so disappointed for you." And I was like, and then literally I connected with Grant and went round to his house 2 days later, and in his lovely place in Moole Avenue in Brighton on the Golden Mile, and he told me, I'm not going to continue. But this is a funny story. There's just so many over the years. But so I get delisted, right? I'm 23. I didn't enjoy my time playing AFL whatsoever. I never believed in myself. So I would go to the VFL and dominate. You know, I especially my 2 years at St Kilda, I sort of was just playing so well, and I was emergency every game. Every final St Kilda played in 04 and 05, and we made 2 prelims. I was emergency. I was actually meant to play in 05 against Sydney. I was picked. I was told by Grant, and then after the final training session, he made a decision that I was out, and Brendan Goddard was going to be emergency, and BJ went in. Now listen, I can't ever compare to Brendan Goddard, but that year at St Kilda, ultimately the spot in that back line was between Sam Fisher and myself, and they picked Sam Fisher over me, and he got the first 5 games. And I remember driving Grant home, and he's saying, like, I know it's your turn now, because Chip's got the first shot, and he was guaranteed a certain amount of games, and if he played well, he'd say, and if he didn't, and he hasn't played well. And I said, all right, well, we're going to give him one more game. And sure enough, one more game, he has like 20 and becomes an elite player. And I'm not saying I could ever get to that level, but those 2 years, so I'd go to the VFL and I'd play my natural game. I wouldn't worry about anything and play really well. But as soon as I'd go into the AFL or even at training, I would dread. I look back on it now, and I just can't believe the mental position I was in. I used to watch the clock from when I had to get up to go to training and watch the seconds and go, I got another more minute to wait in bed. I got another more minute. And, you know, I just go to training and almost hope sometimes the ball didn't come to me. And I literally cannot believe I was like that. And now at 39 and the people I've met and what I've achieved, like it could have been so much better. And for me, it was probably the best ever thing that happened when I was delisted. Because, as I said, it's serendipitous timing, because I got into banking, I got an internship, finished my degree, and it was just before the financial crisis hit. So if I'd got started in 2008, 2007, the GFC, no one was hiring. Everyone was worried about, you know, what's going to happen to asset price and what have you. I got in just before then and was afforded an opportunity and got a graduate position at ANZ in corporate finance. And my career was sort of off to the races from then. But one of the things I really like about this program is that people are talking honestly and about what is perceived externally as the best thing ever. Yeah. And yes, playing AFL was my childhood dream. And
I'm sure you're grateful for the opportunity as well, because that's one thing that people get really upset with. They go, I'd die to do that. It's like, not saying that we're not grateful, but saying just it does come with challenges. Yeah,
I'm extremely grateful. It was achieving my childhood dream, but it's complicated and it's hard.
When you said before about the like hoping the ball like didn't come to you, like it's incredible how common that must be. Like I look back to my last 2 years of footy, and I was on the bus sometimes, like going to a game, just thinking, "Fuck me! I hope this bus just breaks down, so I just do not have to do this."
Yep.
It's obviously a severe anxiety, performance anxiety, whatever it is. I'm not sure. It's a psyche. You know, I'm still trying to work through it now. But since I finished, like, all that stress just doesn't even come to me. With a podcast, you'd think it'd be the same, but it's not. I don't know. Like, there's just something around the belief and the anxiety of performance that I still haven't been able to really put my finger on why that actually came. But it is so common. Like, a lot of players really do not enjoy actually playing football, but I love the lifestyle of being a footballer.
Yeah, and the camaraderie and being so fit and conditioned is fantastic. And then certainly, I think you get the superficial things to an extent that someone recognises you. Yeah, the old Starbar Sunday night drink card. You used to get that at Collingwood. You know?
Yeah, CQ, I got it once, but then they wouldn't actually believe that I was a player.
Yeah. I used to remember, actually, I reckon the first couple of years I used to take my AFL Players Association card in my wallet just in case.
Show them.
You know,
you have to show them. There's proof.
Yeah. Really? Like, yeah, I haven't played any games, but I'm on the list. I remember going out there when I was on my crutches with my foot, you know, still going, yeah. But, you know, I think that I'm just, you know, I do believe that if you do have a fantastic sporting career, that it just should be viewed as a chapter in your life, because it would be so incredibly sad and almost insular if your whole life was based on this sporting experience that was more likely going to finish in your 20s.
Yeah.
So what do you do for utility? Forget about the economic reasons why you need to study, because you need to provide a roof over your head and feed your family and develop or whatever, and travel and whatever. But just the utility that you get from working and the purpose from actually improving and mastering a skill and socializing with people. So I had a pretty pragmatic view on it, and I'm very grateful for the home and the family construct I had to continue to reinforce that. And even though my parents were disappointed that I didn't fulfill all my goals in the AFL system, my mum, I think, was really relieved that the AFL had finished. I think my dad was really frustrated because he could see that, I was in the system for 6 years. So clearly, and 3 clubs, enough people thought I had the talent and the work ethic and the athleticism to sort of make it, or otherwise I would have just been cut after 2 years. But I do believe there's a lot of players that come in, or a lot of sports people that come into the system and come straight out because they can't come to grips with letting go and playing with freedom. And I look at it now, I'm very grateful that it wrapped up because I was able to transition to my next career. But looking at it now, there's just no way I would have approached my AFL career like I did. I would have just gone with reckless abandonment. Yeah. It wouldn't have mattered. I would have gone out there and said, if I get 10 kicked on me today, it doesn't matter, because in 10 years' time, I'm going to be living in Manhattan and I'm going to be out and about and living my best life. And I think that's something that this podcast is doing a really good job to talk about, the actual truth of the matter, that it's not all glamorous. It's not all, that day I went out there and played in front of 100,000 people. Well, a lot of people, they're just trying to get one game. They're trying to get on a list. And then when they get there, they're paralyzed from fear. And I actually had a few times where I'd get the ball and I'd almost forget how to kick.
Yeah.
And how many times you kicked? Like 10 million over your life. And I'd get it and I'm like, what do I do with the ball? Like, it's just crazy, the mentality. And I guess that's the difference from the best and amateurs like me. But I do think that the AFL and clubs should invest more in understanding those blockages, because a lot of players you look at, and I think the superficial assessment would be, his skill's not good enough, or he doesn't read the play well enough, or he's not fast enough, good enough. A lot of the time it could be, hey, are you enjoying playing? And if you're not, talk to me like how you feel when the ball comes to you. Talk to me about how you feel when you wake up in the morning for the game. I feel terrible. Well, why don't we work on addressing some of those triggers? Why don't we do something like, we're going to guarantee to play you 3 games in a row. We're not going to drop you. So it doesn't matter. You don't play well, doesn't matter. I'm going to keep you in the team. I think that's where the next generation of coaches are excelling. And that's why I think Clarkson
and Richmond, I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
With Emma Murray, I'm not sure if you've seen, a lot of her stuff. We spoke about this exactly. It's like A game versus B game, and it's like, when are you in your A game versus when are you in your B game? And it's more about, look, you're always going to be in both, but it's about being in your A game more and identifying what that looks like. And if that's, releasing your fear and just focusing on your job that's next at hand, not getting too far ahead, all these types of things, which has categorically changed the way that a lot of those players play, and they play with freedom. And it's so easy to say that in theory, but it really does come to a whole club embracing it. Because if you've got one person saying it, but the senior coach doesn't give a shit about it, then it's irrelevant.
Yeah, fish rots from the head. And you have to do it and practice it through the good and the bad. And I see that old habits creep in and they die very hard when you're losing or when there's frustrations. But you need continuity, and you need to have commitment, and it needs to be tangibly felt and embraced. It's not something you just can preach. You got to do and orientate the whole club, and I think that the best teams are doing that. But and I think there's also got to be an acknowledgement that the subjects, your team, the players, they're still in such an early stage of their life cycle. They're learning, they're experiencing, their brains are still malleable. To determine whether a player can make it or not at 19, 18, 20, 21, they're in the first quarter of their entire life. I think the best approach is, life is long, and even if you achieve your dream early on, don't stop there. That you can achieve more than you ever expected. And I think about my life. Like, my life has only got better, and I had an unbelievable sort of 10 years living in the States, with my wife at that stage, partner, and unencumbered, her doing her career, me chasing first in banking and then my own sort of entrepreneurial pursuit. It was just wonderful, and I don't even think about AFL. I never think about AFL. I never think about playing or what it was like. It's only when I come back here and people talk so much about footy, but over there, like, you know,
no one cares.
No one cares. And
it's flattening. So I won't be getting drink cards at.
No, mate. But maybe because of the podcast, though.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that. So you finish up playing footy. You spend a bit of time with the Collegians. Got to give them a shout out because Halsey, Greeny, and Viv Mitchie, Jake Trotter, all the boys, they're absolutely massive fan of you. Then you head over to New York. You start your career with ANZ.
Yes.
In banking and venture capitalists. Is it a similar type of concept? I had Matt DeBoer on last week and he explained what it was, went straight over my head, and I just sort of nodded, was like, yeah, of course. What is that? But really layman's terms, day-to-day role of what that was. Okay,
so I went to the States in September 2010 to study at business school, actually. I was doing an MBA here and at Melbourne University. And that coincided with me being transferred with ANZ to their New York office to work in corporate finance, which effectively is how to fund large companies to grow, to expand their operations, to look at issuing more capital to fund their business or acquire other businesses or invest. And I got a wonderful opportunity to effectively rebuild that business because it had been shut down because of the financial crisis, the GFC, which happened in around that time period, 2011, 2010. And it was a wonderful opportunity. I worked between New York and London. So I did 2 weeks in New York, 2 weeks in London for about 14 months, establishing this corporate finance function. And then, I was lucky. I got promoted very quickly to director. I was put on the executive team and afforded extraordinary opportunities to work with the biggest multinationals in the world. Next minute I was out in Cupertino pitching the Apple treasurer, or I met the Apple CFO, or working on huge transactions. So it was an extraordinary opportunity. And
what was it like seeing some of that wealth, like in people? Like what, like flex on us. Like what are some of the coolest like setups you've seen? Like when you go to a meeting and you just go like, this is fucked.
Flying back on Steve's jets, it was pretty...
Steve Jobs?
No, this is Steve Ross.
Oh, Steve Ross.
Yeah. So I didn't meet Steve Jobs. No, he wasn't around. I was going to say. But, in the corporate finance world, I think it's, you're never spending that much time at people's houses. Yeah. But, certainly, like the campuses are everything you thought of. Like the big Apple and Google tech campuses are just extraordinary. Yeah. And they're not like going out to the Mulgrave office of Adidas or something. It's a little bit... works out there. It's going to be flat. Yeah, which is all right. It's all right.
Oh, it's great.
But, it's not like the biggest, the company's worth over $1 trillion. But I've been so fortunate. And the best thing about AFL is like, because, you walk in, you meet your childhood hero. I remember meeting Nathan Buckley and going, oh my God, it's Nathan Buckley. Yeah. And then next minute, he's like, pushing you to run against him or do weights with him. He's kicking the ball to you and telling you to mark it. That's exactly right. But and then when I moved into banking, I took all that disappointment from AFL. I'm like, I'm not going to let this inhibit me whatsoever. I'm going to walk in. I'm going to treat everybody, no matter their status, their success, their position, the same. I'm going to treat the bottom to the top the same and be very respectful and polite and inquisitive, but be humble, but not be intimidated. And that has supported my career so dramatically in both banking in Australia and overseas, and also now with Bluestone. But this was a pretty good story. So if you're the CEO of a company in which it's linked to RSC Ventures and you're a portfolio company, so basically RSC Ventures is Steve Ross and Matt Higgins' private family office. They invest in sports, they invest in media, they invest in hospitality, they invest in tech. And Steve owns the Miami Dolphins, and he owns the Hard Rock Stadium. So you're invited, if you're the CEO of one of the portfolio companies, to one game, and you sort of get the whole experience. So I'll never forget, arriving, and this was the second time I did it, arriving, and I took our CFO, who was a good friend of mine from banking, and he's done an amazing job at Bluestone. And we got escorted straight onto the field. And then you just stand on the field for the whole warm-up, the anthem, the jets going over, everything, all the players next to you. And then you go straight in the owner's box. And that's the one thing the Americans love. Like, they really do plush boxes. This is not like your top of the Southern Stand, party pies and a draft, on tap. This is the real deal, right? And any cuisine, the finest wine, all the entertainment. So I remember going in there and got the private lift up in, and Steve's there and all the other GM and the owners. And then there's Derek Jeter. Do you know who Derek Jeter is?
I know the name. Yeah, is he the baseball?
Yeah,
one?
baseball.
Yeah, I've actually got, when I went to New York, I actually bought his top. I don't know
the best. Yeah.
I just got it because it was everywhere. I was like, that guy looks cool.
Well, the good news is you're not alone there. Most Australians go there and they buy a New York Yankees hat.
Jeter, man.
Jeter. So I met Derek Jeter. He's like the best shortstop of all time. I actually saw him score his, I think it was 3,000th hit for the New York Yankees. I think he's second all time, and I was in the stands when I was in the bleachers when he hit his home run. It was just absolute fluke. He got a hit, and then in the 6 innings he hit a home run, and it was incredible. But met Dan Marino, which you might remember from Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, and he's like the legend of the Dolphins, and a few other Mark Anthony, one of J-Lo's former exes. He's a big deal down in Miami. He was in there, and anyway, so the game finishes, and I'm with David, and Matt's like, "Oh, we're going to fly home with Steve," because to get time often with Steve, this has frequently happened. But the way you can catch up with him is like you got to sit with him on the jet. So I'm praying that the Dolphins win, so he's in a good mood, and I can talk to him about Bluestone and get him excited. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging. So I speak to Matt Higgins, who is the CEO of RSC Ventures. So and he's the vice chairman of the Dolphins. And he's the one that came to me about investing in Bluestone. He's on Shark Tank in America as a guest, and he's done some extraordinary things. So I go to Matt, when we get on the jet, can David come with me? Is there a spare seat? And he's just going, no, just like the CEO only. So I went to Cookie and went, sorry, mate, you're going to have to fly commercial back. So sure enough, like the setup is that elite. There's a private lift. The lift goes down from the box, and then there's a door that opens, and you walk straight out of the stadium, and there's a convoy of cars, and there's a police escort. They block out all of the roads exiting the stadium. Like the stadium's, a bit smaller version of the MCG. Maybe it's like 60,000, 70,000. So everything's blocked. Cars, the motorcade goes out straight through, drives for about 5 minutes, straight onto the tarmac. The jet's there, walk off the tarmac, straight on the jet. The jet takes off within 2 minutes, and then you're back in New York like 2.5 hours later or something. And one story I haven't told too many people, I haven't even told this to Matt, is I get to Teterboro Airport where we land, and there's all the cars, and Steve goes to me, where are you going, Nick? And I said, I'm staying in Manhattan. He goes, well, whereabouts? And Alexander and I, we own a small apartment in West Village, but we had a tenant in there and rented it out. So I was actually staying in a place called Yotel, which is like one step off a hostel. It's not too bad. I actually think it's pretty amazing. It's just got the raw basics, but it's very... And I'm pretty... I like to, considering how hard it is to make $1 in a business, I'm very conservative with the company's capital. Yeah. And I was like, staying at Yotel, and it's like an automatic check-in. You get a ticket, you walk up to a room, you punch the code, the door's open. It's a bit wild. Can
you leave your stuff in there?
Yeah. It's a hotel room,
okay,
but there's no human interaction, and there's nothing luxurious, but it's efficient. It's one step up the Holiday Inn. It's like a millennial Holiday Inn.
Really Dylan Friends vibe.
So anyway, you can imagine Steve Ross, a multi-billionaire, we just came off his jet, and he's like, oh, so where are you going? And I was too afraid to tell him I'm staying at the hotel. I should have told him. You would have loved it even more as an investor. But I said, I'm staying at West Village. He goes, all right, you come with me. So I go in with him and his wife and jump out and get out of the tunnel, Lincoln Tunnel. And he's like, where are you going? You're going to West Village, right? And I'm like, yeah, Steve, I'll just jump out here. And he's like, you serious? I go, yeah. I jump out the side of the road. And as soon as the car drives up, like, Yotel was 1 block up. So I walked up there, hit myself and went in. But that was that sort of, I guess, sums me up a little bit, that I went from the ultimate experience on the ground with the anthem and the private escort and police escort and then the private jet, but then stayed at the Yotel. So it's the life of an entrepreneur, mate. Yeah.
It's so with Steve, obviously, now I know who he is. Yeah. Massive. Like, did you guys end up doing business together since? I'm fast forwarding here, I suppose.
Yeah, they're our largest investor.
Yeah.
Wow. They've supported the company through a number of years. And
wow.
It's they've got a lot of investments. They are big investors in, Equinox is owned by Related, and Related is the company Steve is the founder, chair of. They did the largest private real estate development in New York City's history, $50 billion development called Hudson Yards. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Related owned luxury hotels and office buildings. Columbus Circle is Related, developed that. But anyway, they've been fantastic, and they've been very supportive, and they took a big leap of faith in backing a hospitality concept with someone who'd never worked a day in hospitality, first time founder, someone from Australia, and but when they first invested, which was in June, we closed in 2018, June 2018, but we were running a process in late 2017, and I was fortunate that I'd been in banking, so all the capital we've raised about $50 million US. I've raised that all myself, and I was very lucky that I had that skill set and knew how to prepare materials and knew how to do the financial modelling and negotiate, and that's worked out well for us and been a bit of an advantage, certainly, having that business acumen. But I remember there was a few groups, and RSC were late to the party, and had this meeting. I didn't know who Matt Higgins was. I didn't really know much about RSC. Didn't know much about Steve. But had this meeting, and like a day later, they texted me saying, we'll come to the game. We'll fly you down to the game. And literally, so I missed Steve's jet. He went earlier, so I flew commercial, got picked up, and car took me. Same thing. Got out. Person gave me the passes. Said walk through the tunnel, straight onto the ground, and it was Monday Night Football. The Dolphins versus the Patriots, and I'm on the ground by myself, and Tom Brady, who I absolutely love, is standing right there. I'm just watching him warm up, throw. I was like, who would have thought a guy from Brighton, Victoria, who'd never worked a day in a pub, never worked a day in a cafe, that had 6 years in the AFL playing an illustrious 20 games and had worked in finance since, is standing on the ground at the stadium that's owned by the potential investor in your company, and Tom Brady's there. It was just one of those moments that there's been a few like that where I think it's so serendipitous that AFL wrapped up for me and I was able to transition. But it's been, it's because you got to continue to work at it. Like, I went to university for 10 years. I did 3 degrees. I started, when I went into banking, I started with an internship at UBS and then got a graduate position and started as a graduate and worked my way up. So, you just got to continue to improve and focus. And if you feel like you can't get to a certain spot, just like anything, you got to find a pathway, and it might be through study, it might be through conditioning yourself, it might be through networking, could be through just exploring new avenues. But it's the best thing about life, opportunity.
Well, that's what I'm not even going to pretend I know anything about business. I run a podcast, but one thing I have learned, and I chat to a few people that I really look at, like Nick Crocker, who I'm not sure if you know from Blackbird Ventures, and yourself, and what you said there about Steve and your ventures. And it's like, you don't invest in businesses, you invest in people. And I suppose, without saying that, Steve has seen something in you, which we've all seen today and heard on the podcast, that it's someone that has the grit, has the determination, has skill set that you've learned. But honestly, in that as well, you also have the passion and the knowledge to find the questions that you don't know. So that's probably something that I've learned recently, and hearing you say it again, I'm like, fuck, that's what it is. It's like, it's not investing in the business idea, it's investing in the person behind it and their skill set in being able to go through, I suppose.
And to bring it home and to do everything that it takes to give it the best shot to be successful. And so much of it's linked to EQ. There's too much focus. There's a bit myopic on IQ, but the world has changed so much with technology and digital and AI, machine learning, that humans are going to be disintermediated for their pure brain capacity. Machines are going to do it far more efficiently and cheaply. It's EQ where humans' structural advantage is going to be. And when you think about developing a company, like, so much of it is about getting the right team dynamic, getting the right culture. Bluestone Lane doesn't have really any intellectual property. Hospitality doesn't, full stop. Anyone that tells you that they do, I think is probably smoking the good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyone can make a great coffee. Anyone can do an avocado smash. Anyone can make a great steak. But the EQ elements are so essential, how the team and the culture and the atmosphere and the service orientation. And that's very much like any team, whether it's in finance or in sport. It's getting the right people to buy into, and then that have the right values, and then to do it in harmony and to the best of their ability. And that's what I've focused on at Bluestone. And we've built this brand, and the brand is a representation of our culture and our service orientation. And honestly, that we have, our mission is, it's not just coffee, it's connection. And perfect coffee and automated coffee, that's easy. That's going to continue to improve. But the thing you can't disintermediate is the way that you can make someone feel, that recognition piece, that they're part of our community, that they're a local, not a customer. And when I look at I get approached a lot to invest in small companies and mentor small companies, and I'm on a couple of boards. And my approach is always about, yes, I can understand like the product market fit, I can understand the unit economics, but can you develop a team, and can you develop a relationship with your core customer that can transcend and last? Is it sustainable? And that is the biggest difference, I think, between the majority of startups, is can they engender that team, that culture, and then attract capital to give it the best shot. Yeah.
Who on, like, this is probably a very long form question, but in your goals now, and I suppose in what you're looking at for those brands that stick out, who are some of your favorite businesses that you go, like, that as a brand, that as a community that you look up to, might not even be in your realm, but you were like, fuck, that's evident that is successful?
There's a number. I think Lululemon's really fascinating. Lululemon hasn't gone very wide with its product. So its SKUs and its core customer is pretty focused. It trades on such a premium multiple to Nike, to Under Armour, to Adidas. It's nowhere near as big, but it trades at a higher multiple because it's valued at a higher relative level. I think Lulu are extraordinary. So they focus so much on building community, and the store manager has such an active role, and they were so empowered to go out and develop these and reach out with the yoga groups and the Pilates and the running groups. I think they've done an extraordinary job when you think about what they actually do. They don't have a ton of differentiation in their product. Yes, some would say that their tights are slightly better, but it's not a
the
point
vibe,
of product differentiation like an iPhone versus 8110 Nokia, right? It's pretty similar. I think when I think about entrepreneurs that are really inspiring, I think Branson's unbelievable, Richard Branson, and the way he continues to innovate and invigorate, and the amount of business he's invested in, and just that focus on brand is extraordinary.
The start of Bluestone, obviously dominating the field of investment banking. When did that come? Like, when did you think, oh, fuck, there's a gap in the market here in the US to start the Australian culture of coffee to bring here? Because I know, I was there, I've been to one of your cafes in New York, and I was like, fuck, there is just genuinely nothing like this here. And it is so weird going to like a cafe, asking for a coffee and getting like a water bottle full of like coffee. And I was like, what the
dishwater.
Fuck is this? Like, how am I meant to drink it? It's like 4 liters of like liquid.
Yeah, well, I think it was very intuitive, honestly, and I was solving a need that I had. I was creating this brand out of self-necessity. So when I moved to the States, and as part of my studies, I was doing effectively an executive program in corporate finance and venture capital. I was pretty accomplished in corporate finance, had good understanding, so I was able to transition and do more venture capital and more specialized study. And during one of my classes was on working on a business idea, and I was mucking around, and I'd always had like different ideas, and my wife also, she's had a lot of different side hustles and ideas, and I basically kept coming back to doing coffee because I was so extraordinarily surprised at Starbucks. So this would be a good one. What do you think Starbucks market capitalization is?
I did listen to Ted Rich's podcast.
So right now it's probably about, I haven't checked it today, it's probably like 130 billion US,
yeah.
right? So anyway, I couldn't believe this company's so big, and especially because I had such a myopic view on Starbucks, right? You know, Starbucks failed in Australia and it's terrible, and we've got great coffee, and how do people drink this? Similar to your immediate, your opening monologue. But I started studying then, okay, how fast did they do it, and how much of the market capacity you have? And the second biggest player behind Starbucks was Dunkin', and Dunkin' was worth at that stage $6 billion. So it had this moat of, at this stage, 74 billion, circa 70 billion. I just couldn't believe it. You very rarely see two companies that sell the same type of product in the same cities, in the same market, with such what we call an economic moat, like a structural moat. And I just started to dive in the story of Starbucks, and I was very intrigued, and I had such a narrow view, and I just realized what they've done is absolutely extraordinary. They commercialized espresso coffee. Before Starbucks, no one drank espresso really at scale. Pockets of Italian migrants and Europeans that probably drank it, but that wasn't mainstream America, and that's what they achieved. But then as I was observing that there was this new generation that were very much into artisanal products, they were into craft beer, they were into natural skincare, they were finding tremendous amount of community through class fitness. It was the Soul Cycle rage, it was the reimagination of yoga. They were finding these businesses where they had real local connection, and I use the example of a mani and pedi. Do you know what a mani and pedi is?
I do, yes.
You do.
That's
so
something I do understand.
Where we lived in West Village, there was mani and pedi places everywhere. It's like probably 25, but people are so, and you think about then, it's pretty commoditized and ubiquitous, but everyone would have their own professional, what's it called? Like beautician. So it's like getting a haircut. Like we're very loyal to hair. I wouldn't go into a place and I'd get my one hairdresser. I wouldn't, chop and change. I'd be loyal for the next 5-10 years. And people were having these relationships, but they didn't have it with coffee. They were treating coffee purely as transactional, like it was solving a need for caffeine. And that's where I just thought there's this new demographic that are inquisitive about better quality. They want better type of atmosphere. They want better service. They want healthier food. And I just looked at the Australian market and I thought there's a reason why Starbucks failed. And there's an opportunity to bring it here, despite never working a single day in hospitality. I'd never done one shift in a pub, in a coffee shop, in a restaurant. I did one catering job in between footy. It was probably when I was earning 18 grand trying to work out how to survive. I did like a catering event for my brother who was working for the big group out in Bendigo, but I didn't know how to, pour a cocktail or anything. So I was the guy I got a lot of utility from cleaning up tables and putting all the cans in a recycle bag, which reminds me of when I was a kid, when I used to go to the G and watch the Demons play, and then I would come home with 2 plastic bags full of beer cans and Coke cans and take them and get 5 cents a can or 2 cents a can. So anyway, that was my Bendigo. So that's how much experience I had. So I started becoming a student of the industry, and I just read as much as I could, and I really based the business around 2 key things. One, customer centricity, so what I missed, and I started breaking down, like, why do I like going to a coffee shop in Melbourne? Why did the team go every morning and every afternoon? And why did I run the tan and then have a big breakfast, read the paper back to front with poached eggs, with a flat white in a ceramic and a latte in a glass? Why did I love that experience with Alexandra? Why did she love that experience with me? And then I had a good understanding around like cost structures and managing risk, because everything I know about hospitality is it's so incredibly risky, because the barrier of entry to hospitality is so low. It's quite intuitive, right? You get a lease, you build a bar, you get some coffee, you get a machine. Like, it's iterative. You can put it together. But the complexity is so high because the variability is all linked to your people, and people aren't a product. They're up and down. They have preferences. They have dislikes and likes. They have days in which they decide they don't want to go to work, or they do want to go to work. So and you have customers that are often very demanding. So that's the challenge in hospitality. Is it's far more complicated once you start, but to open is a lot easier than starting a podcast, for example. But yeah, I just realised that there's this opportunity, and I was working on Park Avenue on 48th and Park in JP Morgan building, and it was I'd say a quarter of the office, maybe half of the ANZ office was Australian, and they were all desperate for a great coffee. So the first one actually opened 2 blocks away in a subterranean basement. It's similar to this, but it's going down, not up. Yep. No street visibility, no signage. We weren't allowed a sandwich board out the front. You had to get down this decrepit escalator that was constantly broken. And it was the only way you'd find it is through word of mouth. So it was quite elusive, but that was part of the charm and building the brand.
Yes.
And it had all these little trinkets. It had old 80s pictures from old footy records, and it had old, footballs, and it had cricket ball. It was a little bit corny on the edge.
Yeah.
But it introduced the history and the heritage that we were Australian, and I needed to decouple us from the perception that hospitality or Australian sort of, I guess, service culture is Crocodile Dundee. It's Outback Steakhouse, which is an American company, not Australian, and I needed it to feel more premium, refined, and consistent with what our coffee and hospitality culture is, which is very cosmopolitan, and in most cases, very, very premium and elite and sophisticated. So it started with one, and then the second one was next to this New York Stock Exchange in the lobby of a building, 75-year-old building, never had a retail amenity. We had to find water and power, and took a chance on us. And then the third location, which took us to really the next stratosphere, is we opened our first cafe, which was in West Village,
yes,
on the corner of Perry and Greenwich Avenue, and that was the one where Taylor Swift walked in.
So was is that just by chance or word of mouth, or was that like building the hype by that stage?
Yeah, that was really by word of mouth.
Yeah. Because it was near. Was it right to say that it was in the same building as a Victoria's Secret model, or was it? Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that are interesting. So Perry Street was pretty well known. So I knew West Village would be a good spot because I thought I lived there. It was my favorite area of Manhattan, and it feels a little bit like Australia. The leafy trees and not too many avenues, and you walk, and townhouses. Really nice spot. And I thought, there's so many Australians that walk up Bleecker Street to shop, and then they turn down Perry Street because that's where Carrie Bradshaw's supposed brownstone apartment was from Sex and the City.
Yep.
So she'd come out the front, Mr. Bigger be in the limo. So people are every day getting photos out the front of this thing, and Aussies love it. They love Sex and the City, and I thought, they'll just continue on, and then they'll go to Bluestone. So it was really fortuitous that we open up next to this spray tan place, and I didn't think twice about a solarium spray tan place, but sure enough, it's the number one spray tan place for all the Victoria's Secret models.
Wow.
So we open, and the next thing, like the most glamorous, or some of the most glamorous women in the world are walking in and having coffee after their spray tan, or the West Village is very popular with a lot of celebs, a lot of artists. So you get a lot of actors, you get a lot of comedians, you get a lot of musicians that live around there, and they come in. And one of the beauties about Bluestone is we treat everybody the same. So it doesn't matter if you don't have $1 to your name, or you're really wealthy, or if you're famous or you're infamous. It doesn't matter with us. Everyone gets treated the same amount of respect, and we treat everyone with gratitude and humility. Including, I remember one day when I rocked up there, I've told this story a few times, I rocked up on a weekend and it's snowing, and I'm like, oh God, when West Village gets really busy, there's always a queue out the front on the weekend. It's dumping snow. I go, I'm going to see how the team are going, hanging in there. And I walk out, and as I walk in, Cameron Diaz is sitting outside in the snow having coffee, and I'm like, what is it? So I go to the general manager, who's a Melbourne guy, Tony Pantano, who has a business.
From Ivanhoe?
Yeah,
I'm on Ivanhoe.
Yeah, there you go.
So he's a part of now with
Only Hospitality with Julian.
Yeah, Moose.
And sure enough, so I walk in and I go, Tony, why is Cameron Diaz out the front? Lost completely. I think about it now, I'm almost embarrassed. He's like, mate, what do you want me to do? She was in the queue. There was people in front of her. She had to wait her turn. That was the one table. I offered it to her. She said, sit down. And I'm like, I'm so happy, proud of you. That's why we're special, and that's why we're going to make it. And that's why I'm really really excited about the future.
And you should be extremely proud of yourself, mate, because it is incredible. Before I even knew you and knew your story, I did go over to New York and went to the one in West Village. I do remember this bloke that was serving me, And he was an Australian guy. Like, we tell straight away, like, Australian guy. I was like, this guy's cool.
Yeah.
And there was two things. He came up to me and he's like really putting on the accent. And I was like, one, I'm Australian, mate. So like, just relax. Like, I know what you're doing. And on the two, I was like, this bloke would dominate New York City. Like, the amount of like, he was a very handsome bloke. So I just do you know who that would have been?
No,
okay.
But we've had a few.
Yeah. Well, he was like a typical Aussie guy, and I was just like, you are so cool, and I'd love to be you.
The amount of dates that the Bluestone Lane staff have achieved over the years.
This guy was cool. This guy was cool. We're gonna get to New York.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
Well, I'd love to have you a customer, Dylan. I definitely can get you a few coffee cards, actually. You know.
I have to bring my old AFLPA card.
Yes, you will.
Yeah, okay,
and bring one of your contracts. And
I will.
Depending on how much you earn, I'll give you more coffee.
Not much.
Yeah.
Last question on this, because this is probably something that's really relevant to where I'm at now, and not to say that I'm going to turn to a venture capitalist and own a group and what I want to.
Yeah.
But it's like, how did you take that sole idea of like a small business per se into then creating it into now your group?
For us, we own operate. We have about 55 stores now, but we have some licensed stores. We have one in the Fox lot, the Fox Studio lot, which is basically now just Disney and Fox Productions. I think it's the second largest studio lot in LA. We've got a Bluestone there. It's licensed. We have one opening in JFK Airport. We have one opening in Newark Airport. We have one opening in Boston Logan International Airport, where it'll be operated by the airport operator, but we're a concession, and it'll be look and feel on the same menu as a Bluestone, same product, and we get paid a royalty, but we don't operate it. But building for me, I was always focused on building a brand, and I was actually focused on building a lifestyle brand. For me, I realized I can build this brand that stands for health, for human connection, for aspiration, and so many Americans would do anything to go to Australia. It's on their bucket list. There's probably one or two, but the majority of them, the vast majority, will never go to Australia because it's too far and because it's not ingrained in the culture to explore internationally like it is for us. We're so much more nomadic in that respect. So what does that mean? It meant that we had certain standards and we had certain ways in which we were going to operate and how we were going to project externally that had to be really, really consistent. And building a brand is about operating at a really consistent level. So when you go in as a customer, when you experience that good or service, it meets your expectations. It's not volatile. You can't have a brand if one day it's great and one day it's poor. And I was also fascinated about how people take a commoditized product, an orthodox product, and make people pay a premium, and the affiliation and the endorphins they get from carrying that label.
I did it yesterday.
What'd you do?
Like, I'm getting back into golf.
Yep.
Had tailor-made clubs.
Yep.
But for the life of me, I'm the worst fucking golfer in the world. I'd hit 39 plus. Like, that's not even on the card. But for some reason, I need to buy Titleist.
Yeah.
Like, and I had to change my whole club set.
Well, that's exactly right. When you look about handbags, for example, you could have a straw bag that has the same functionality as a Birkin bag.
I'm not hitting any better with any of these clubs. I'm still shit.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you've got a Hermes bag or a Vuitton bag or a Gucci bag. Now that could be anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000, or you could have a straw bag that's probably worth $5,000, and they both serve the same functional use. They carry things, carry stuff, but one has their brand positioning and the aspiration, and they make someone feel special, that intangibility. And I was blending that and the focus on building something that could be scaled. And even though out of the gate I wasn't like, we're going to do 50 stores, I just knew the best chance to do this is to build something that's focused not just on a single unit, but on a brand, and where people would recognize and have comfort and trust that when they go in, the coffee's going to taste the same, the fulfillment speed is going to be the same, the menu's going to be the same, but have certain elements that are very personalized and different. So when they could walk in, they wouldn't say, it's just a Bluestone. They would say, this is my Bluestone. And that has that art, and that it's part art, it's part science, but it's certainly very methodical. that is what's enabled us to scale.
But how do you keep that when, as you said, you're franchise? Is it franchising the right word now?
No, we're still company owned.
Company owned. Yeah, so you own every single one.
We own all the stores. The company.
Do you worry about losing that, or do you, like, how strict are you on making sure you're putting the right people in place? That is everything.
You're exactly right. Yeah. That's everything. That's the biggest challenge we have. But if you can pull it off, that's where the magic is. And we've been able to do that. And a lot of it is we focus on what needs to be uniform and what needs to be bespoke. Uniform is that the coffee needs to taste the same temperature, needs the same milk, needs the same fulfillment speed, needs the same volume. Those things are really, really important when you go into Bluestone. But the fact that the store looks different, that the composition of the staff is different and variable, that they treat you like a local, which is, hey, Dill, know your name, face, and order. Yeah. Those things everyone wants personalised.
I feel so good when my coffee guy does that.
Yeah. So it's breaking the elements down that need to be uniform and those that need to be customised. And you spend all your training and your SOPs and the culture's built around it, and then that's how it scales. And you have such strict guidelines, and you have you hold standards and accountabilities that's what we need to do. And it's not doing it in a rude way, it's just doing it in a very transparent where everyone understands to be their best. They just need to execute their role, and we'll support them to do it, and you bring in talent that enables it to happen. What
is next for you? Like, where do you see Bluestone going? I know you said before, like, is it wrong for me to say that Bluestone now is a venture capital company, like, or is it a coffee company? Like,
well, it's a hospitality brand, but it's funded via venture capital, growth capital. With Bluestone, we're focused on, we've got a number of different avenues. So we probably want to go from 55 stores to 100 stores by the end of next year. Yeah. We are very interested in the product, the CPG, consumer product goods space, so selling coffee in supermarkets or capsules or food products. So we're investing a lot in that. We're investing a lot in... Pardon?
Verticals.
You're exactly right. Exactly.
I'm learning.
There you go. Different channels like direct to consumer, so e-commerce, Amazon, wholesale. So there's a lot for us to do. There's obviously the international piece, but the US alone is 330 million people.
Wow.
So instead of just having Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, you have 35 cities of this equivalent size. So the opportunity is really, really big, and the addressable market's massive. And Starbucks has shown that because they have nearly 40,000 stores globally. So there's plenty of runway for us to actually stick with our knitting and just keep opening stores and then diversify into product, because we're big believers in omni-channel. And what does I mean from that perspective? That the product can be sold across a whole variety of different channels. So one is the retail channel, you walk into a store. One's the home channel. How do we get your beans at home? It could be via our e-commerce site. It could be via Amazon. It could be via when you buy from target.com. So we are looking at having engagements with our core customer across where they live, where they work, where they want to hang out, where they look forward to visiting, whether it's in this city or that city. And we want to be that brand where they have great respect and trust. And so I think the opportunity is big. And the Australian and New Zealand coffee culture, or that brand, like it is a globally known brand that people go, oh, it's an Aussie cafe. Whether that's in London, Paris, Hong Kong, Singapore, it is out there. We want to be the biggest and the one that is the most scalable, because most of the smaller ones will be single units, owner operate, where we want to be an authentic representation of what premium Australian hospitality is and lifestyle is, which is this blend of health and humanity. And that's what I'm focused on, mate.
It's unbelievable, mate. It's honestly probably the most insightful chat I've ever had in my life. I'm not just saying that. Like I've learnt so much today.
That's not saying much for the former guest, mate.
No, I think it is, to be honest. With still the utmost respect. But
it shows you what you can learn, right?
Yeah.
No one from my family came from hospitality either. So it's just life's long, and the best thing in life is experiencing new things, new opportunities, and learning. And if you go in with a positive intent and you go in thinking that you're interested in hearing people's stories and being open-minded, opportunities will continue to arrive. And even though footy was the childhood dream, but it came to an abrupt end, and I didn't particularly enjoy it, which I'm really sad about. I just turned that straight into the next career, and I was like, that one's done. I'm into the next one, and I'm going to play local footy with my mates, with my old school friends, and enjoy that. And I'm going to focus on my business career, and then I'm going to do that and learn as much as I can about business. I'm going to travel and take on opportunities to work overseas and new opportunities, and then transition to something else and leave banking and jump into hospitality, and then the next stage it'll be something else, but it'll be the balance of professional and personal. Now I've got 3 kids and an amazing life partner, and have a good time while you're at it. I mean, that's the most important thing. Great building companies, and sounds really sexy and glamorous. It's absolutely not. It's so much hard work, but it is intrinsically rewarding. But you've got to have a good time. You've got to enjoy life, because it can be taken away from you, and it's what you're here for.
Unbelievable. It realistically, holistically as well, comes back to the exact point. It's not what happens, it's how you react to it. I say it every week. You've been that to a T. You've been through all these things. It's got you to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And again, I speak in layman's terms, but you're a doer. A lot of people say they want to do these things. You touched on it earlier. The ideas are there, but it's the execution, and it's actually going out and doing it. Yeah. I'm pretty motivated for a few things after that.
So that's good.
Yeah, mate, honestly, yeah.
So am I.
Yeah.
And I've loved being on this program, and I think what you're doing is fantastic. I think it's raw, it's honest, and it's how it is. And more media needs to be orientated around this. Not the perfect Instagram photo, but actual true depiction of what it's like. And there's one thing that has been amazing in my time meeting a lot of very, very successful, famous people is they're all human. Yeah. And no matter how much money they have, they're still vulnerable, they're still fragile, they're still insecure, and they're still searching for something. And some of the most lonely people I've ever met are the ones that have the most money. They're billionaires and they got it all, and they would do anything to be in your seat at your age, building a new business. That's what keeps the fire going. So just continue to learn, be a good person, give back as much as you can, lead with positive intent, and with the right values. And it's amazing how doors open, and that's what's happened to me. I think I've just gone about it in a way I've been very interested, and I've been respectful and humble, and said I'll give it everything I've got. And that's how I've got a lot of people to buy into joining Bluestone, and a lot of investors who have backed me. Yeah. I'm very fortunate that the team has enabled me to develop this company. It has not been the Nick Stone show. I've been, key part, but it's the team. Yeah.
Unbelievable, mate. Thank you so much. From the bottom of my heart, it's been incredible to have you in. Wanted to stick this off for a long time. Definitely lived up to the expectations, and can't wait to get my vaccination, get over to New York.
Yes.
Have a couple of those coffees. How many did you say if I bring my card? Was it one for each year or?
Yeah. Okay. One for every game, actually. I'm not going to go broke.
41 coffees.
40, oh, cheapers actually.
Yeah. I might have to spread that out over a couple of trips.
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
I might go to every 41 locations, and I'll just travel.
And you still have a few spare.
Yeah.
So, if you come over, I guarantee you 41 coffees, and we should do a segment in New York.
We will.
We'll do a Dylan and Friends, and I've got some interesting characters for you to meet over there.
I want to meet that guy that I wanted to make out with at your
gang. Well, we're going to have to go through the CCTV.
I'll be, and I'm going to tell him, don't overplay your Aussie accent again.
You can come in, you can have your spray tan, and then we'll have a few coffees at the Collective Cafe.
Nick Stone, you're an absolute star, mate. There's no surprises. You are where you are, and I'm so excited for what's to come for you and Bluestone and your family and life and our relationship going forward. I'm sure there's some cool things. So thanks again.
Thanks.